Yo, what's happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We finally finished Periphery's Discography. I know you guys are probably frustrated with me for how long it has taken to get to Alpha, considering we've already checked out Omega, but the time has finally come. I checked out this album about 2 weeks ago or so, but I just haven't gotten around to making a video for it. So guys, if you want to get the full album reaction, it's on Patreon, as well as all of the other Periphery album reactions I've ever done. They're also all on Patreon. Also, we've got like over 100 album reactions on Patreon as well. You can get access to all the polls, all of the different perks, the Discord that comes with Patreon. So if that interests you, all the links are in the description, guys. Otherwise, enjoy the highlight video, which is just the best moments, in my opinion, from the album reaction. All of the review portion and the like major talky points of me just yapping away are on Patreon. So if you want to support me directly, links are in the description, guys. Otherwise, leave a like in the video, make sure you're subbed to the channel, and enjoy.
Our voices echo on a quiet night. Silver faces on unholy cathedral moon and sun.
What's this melody already? That's another Periphery song. They've obviously kind of taken it from, is it on Omega? This is the bad thing. It's the same, the bad thing thing. It's the bad thing thing.
The screams will echo on a quiet night.
Those riffs give me the heebie-jeebies. Like I've just swallowed a whole bag of sour Skittles or something. Oh, this is so good. Get it. Just playlists. How are you? Where are you? Fucking, how are you? I specifically remember when I'd gotten around to doing a lot of the Periphery albums back in the day. People were like, oh, Alphas just sucks. And I think that kind of just stuck, and I never really wanted to get around to it. But now that we get around to it, this has been great so far.
As the water beads up on the window, turn the sad song up on the radio.
Okay, right. Okay, maybe a little bit cringe. Maybe. And the Ray. Kind of feels like something off of Holding Absence's new album, I'm not gonna lie. It's like that post-hardcore sound. That's actually really catchy. I would say that's normally not going to be playlist, but I think it's honestly going to be a big grower for me, so it's going to go playlist. If this had a slightly darker synth, this would just be a fucking Meshuggah interlude or a Meshuggah intro. Synth is too happy for a Meshuggah track. Wow, that segment of the song is unbelievable. Now, the lead up to that part, I don't know if it goes playlist, because I kind of feel like the track is just centered around that part, and I'm just waiting for that to happen because I wasn't really that into the intro to the track. But everything after that point is fantastic. Okay, that is for sure catchy. Yeah, that track again, it feels like a lot of the tracks that I'm enjoying off this album, I guess, well, not all the tracks, but like I'm finding all the tracks are very much so listenable. Like, this isn't a bad track by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that some of the tracks kind of have like really, really standout moments in it, and then the rest of it is kind of just not really captivating me that much. So, you know, for example, in that track, the really obvious, so I'm gonna pause for a sec because I've already heard the track, but you know, the really obvious hook line in that was the really, really prominent part of the track, and it was so good. But I just think the rest of the track for me, kind of like, it's like this massive high, and then it kind of comes back down to a relatively decent bass line, but it's just not really enough to kind of keep me engaged. So I'd nearly be listening to that track just for that chorus, I guess. Whereas, you know, I'm thinking of so many other tracks that I can just think of that, you know, even if the verses are only 10%, 15% better than what we heard in this track, it's still enough to kind of make it worth listening to the whole track, because then you still have that big payoff in the chorus or a breakdown. That track, from like an instrumental standpoint, I mean, Periphery's instrumentals are always fantastic, but there was no like big memorable breakdown moment or anything. And then, you know, it was just really, I think, focused on that really, really, you know, prominent hooky, I don't even know if it was a chorus, but the hook part in it that we talked about, but it only featured for like, you know, a few seconds throughout the entire track. So I just don't know if it was enough to go playlist. So it's not going to go playlist for me, but a decent track nonetheless, and obviously the most popular track on the album, which is kind of surprising. But yeah. And again, of course, we've heard 22 Faces. This is a banger.
With no direction, watching time as it draws a perception of scene.
Periphery are honestly just a fucking pop band that's covered 7-string guitars. Again, there's another call out. I'm pretty sure they're identical lyrics to The Bad Thing again. I'm buried alive. Down, down, and down. That intro riff is so fun. Oh yeah. This one wasn't too bad. I love this riff. Just one of those old school sounding riffs, very nostalgic. Stuttery, back and forth, kind of hypnotizing, genty riff. But overall, not my favorite track on the album by any stretch. But we're on to the second last track, which sounds like it's about to go very, very heavy. As predicted, extremely fucking heavy. Yeah, this feels like a very well-rounded album overall. Like I reckon you could probably ask multiple people what their favorite track on the album is and get a lot of different answers. Whereas that isn't the case with a lot of bands, where it seems to be, you know, one or two tracks off of an album that kind of really stand out for the most part. But Periphery are just so consistently good across the board. And even for an album that is definitely not considered one of the better albums by the masses based on what I've seen, is still a very consistent album throughout. Now, it's definitely not my favorite Periphery album. It's had like some pretty high highs, but I feel like it's a fairly like average baseline. It's Periphery, of course. It sounds like Periphery, which is always going to be fun. But there's not been enough big moments in it that have really got me, you know. Le boom. And that is the end of the album. That is, of course, me finishing off pretty much the entire Periphery discography. So as for Alpha, I would still say on a first listen, I prefer Omega, which I think is the general consensus. Now, in saying that, I don't think this album is as bad as people, not bad, people weren't saying it's bad, but I never really got any like high praise from this album. People were always just like, do Omega, no need to do Alpha. And we're talking a while back, so I can't really remember, but I just kind of vaguely remember the general consensus around this album is that people weren't too high on it. But having heard it, I think it's a pretty solid Periphery album across the board. Now, if I was to rank it against their other albums, I would definitely say P2 goes ahead of it, P3 goes ahead of it, Omega goes ahead of it. So already it's falling down the pecking order in terms of my own personal preference. I would say P1 goes ahead of it as well. So it's pretty low on my list. I would say it probably goes ahead of their new album. I really don't fuck with their new album. I may need to listen to it a few more times. And then I would say, even from what I've heard from Hail Stan, I would say it probably would go below that as well. Now, it's probably not fair to compare it against Hail Stan because I haven't heard that full album. But I am just not the biggest fan of it. I would still say it's a good album. I'd say it's like, I don't know if I would say if we were doing like categories like S tier, A tier, B tier, I'd say it's a very high B tier. I'd say it's like up there on the B tier. I don't quite think it makes A tier because there's some very good albums I would consider A tier. For example, I would put P2 in like an A tier album. I would put some other Periphery albums, I'd say in A, but I would not put this into B. I would say Periphery 2 is probably like a low A, whereas this is probably like a high B. So there's not much in it.